Hello again. When I saw that a 60-year-old woman in Scotland, a comedienne, of whom I have never before heard, called Janey Godley, had been denounced for what had described in the newspaper The Scottish Sun as obscenely racist tweets, I was interested. Intrigued, I might almost say. Apparently this woman had been hired by the Scottish government to do some advertisements encouraging people to wear face masks in bed or something of that kind. They've now ditched her and she's promised to donate the fees which she has received to some worthy cause. I first read of this on the BBC website and they declined to repeat what she had said, leaving it to our imagination. They contented themselves with describing the words as unacceptable and relating to black people. The woman herself has denounced herself for her past sins and the use of what she calls disgusting and hateful words. I need hardly say that I was fascinated and determined to look around until I could find out what she had actually said 10 years ago. These are not recent tweets, some of them go back to 2008. I will mention that like anybody who was a teenager in the 1960s, I've heard a fair bit of obscenely racist language and any number of disgusting and hateful words applied to black people. I've never been overly fond of the kind of people who use unpleasant racist terms, and I was quite prepared to see some very awful material. When I read what had actually been said, the sense of anticlimax was so great that I burst out laughing. Disgusting and hateful indeed. At this point, those viewers with a sensitive disposition should perhaps stop watching, for I shall be reading out a couple of the tweets which brought about this orgy of condemnation for that worst sin of the modern world. Here is a typical example of one of the offensive tweets, made when describing a black female pop singer of whom I have never heard, called Kelly Rowland. Kelly does speak like the stereotype black Aunt Jemima, who stands on a stall in the Tom and Jerry cartoon screaming, "Tom, Tom." I have taken the trouble to watch a couple of interviews featuring this woman, and I can see exactly what is meant by this tweet. Is this really obscenely racist? Is it disgusting and hurtful if I hear an Asian guy talking and I say later that he reminds me of Spike Milligan in Curry and Chips? Is it really offensive if I compare a Frenchman with Inspector Clouseau, or say that a Belgian sounds like David Suchet as Poirot? Personally, I don't think so, and neither do many black people. This is the sort of thing that white people get worked up over rather than black people themselves. Here's an anecdote from my past to illustrate the way I'm thinking about this. There was a time when I used to hang out with more black people than I did white. One friend of mine, a Yoruba woman, was carrying on an affair with an old guy from St. Vincent, who was not only married but also old enough to be her father and certainly old enough to know better. He looked old as well. He was very dark, black, almost completely bald, and what hair he did have was snowy white. I was visiting a Jamaican friend and she remarked that she had seen the woman lately, to which I said, she's still hanging out with Uncle Remus, referring of course to the old actor in the Disney film Song of the South, which some of you might have seen. My friend burst out laughing, and when her brother came round an hour later, she repeated what I'd said, whereupon he slapped his leg and roared with laughter. Believe me, these were people who would be very quick off the mark to spot genuine racism, but that didn't mean that jokes about black people or their appearance or the way they behaved were off limits. Why should they be? Anybody ever seen the Jamaican comedian Oliver Samuels, I wonder? Here's another of the shocking tweets relating to a black rapper called Snoop Dogg, who makes no secret of his fondness for smoking cannabis. A black rapper, of course he has weed. A black rapper, of course he has weed. That's his job, isn't it? Seriously, is this obscenely racist? Would it be offensive if I remarked of a Scotsman who was a little fond of whiskey? Well, you know what Scots are like with drink. My objection to all this is that it means we are increasingly unable to distinguish between real racism, which I detest, and tacky jokes, which make me laugh. If we use words like disgusting and obscene to refer to material like the stuff that I've just read out, then we have no real words of criticism or condemnation left when we encounter genuinely vile racism, the kind of which I am, by the way, very familiar. We are debasing the very idea of racism, and there is a danger that if we carry on down this road, people will no longer be able to see the difference between racial prejudice, which can lead to injury or even death, and silly jokes which might at worst upset a few white liberals.